afternoon, everyone. I'm Joyce Cook. I'm one of the co hosts of Sobering Truth, where we seek to lower the reputation of alcohol in the court of public opinion. And my co host via the internet is Miss Iris Stevens. Hello, Iris. How are you?
Hey, doing great.
Today, we're going to talk about the international efforts to reduce alcohol abuse. And I'm not a big fan of the WHO, but they are doing some good things, aren't they, Iris?
They're doing some really good things. They have a plan that operates that they started it in 2022, and the plan goes through 2030. They've got 113 member states who are working on ways to do just what we said to lower the impact of drinking of alcohol. And of course, in a lot of countries, alcohol is ubiquitous. They drink that more than
Yes.
they do water. But it's very impressive what they're doing. You know, you and I have read the programs and what various countries are doing. But I just thought that was interesting that the WHO, World Health Organization, is making a major push to back
Yes.
off. Get countries to back off on alcohol. And of course, in the research we've done, we've looked at how difficult sometimes that is to go into countries that have never seen a problem with alcohol and say,
Right.
look, you need to fix this.
Yes. And I'm just happy that they are doing that. And on one of the articles that I read, I didn't. I thought we were up higher, the United States, in the alcohol use, and we were like 25th in the world. And
Right.
that kind of, it's just everywhere, like you and I talked earlier about. Part of the problem is it's so available. Remember when they tried to get it into the movie theater here in Jonesboro, and I think they did, but
They did get it in.
they did get it in. And
Mhm.
I thought that was the oddest thing. Little kids, somebody could slip them a drink, and it's dark in there. And then there was one, I think they tried to get it in a nail salon here
Yeah,
in
that one they did
Jonesboro.
finally actually turn down. I think that's one of maybe two liquor permits that they actually turned down.
Right.
And of course, the nail salon I think was going to offer, because I think in Jonesboro what they expect is that you have to offer food. And so the nail salon was going to make things like ham sandwiches available, and they said
Oh my
no.
goodness.
But see, I also was outraged about putting alcohol in the movie theaters, because if you can't go for 2 hours, a 2 hour movie, without drinking, you've got a serious problem.
Very
And I don't,
serious.
I know from what I understand, and I have never been to that particular theater that does this, they can carry alcohol if they don't finish drinking. I think they have like a little bar in there.
Hmm.
But if they don't get finished, they can carry it into the um, theater with them. If that's
Right.
correct, that makes me even angrier.
Yeah.
Um,
It's
it's,
just
keep in mind, we need to start this off every time with Craighead County is a dry county. It's been voted dry 3 times, essentially voted dry 3 times. And, the alcohol they add is against a lot of people's wishes who voted this county dry. But I thought, the WHO, when I was looking at some of this stuff, I thought it was interesting. They admit that, say, excess drinking is one of the most common preventable causes of global mortality, and it's implicated in more than 3 million deaths each year.
wow.
3 million deaths attributed to alcohol, at least in part. And they say that's due to the efforts of alcohol industry, which is dominated by a small group of firms and generate more than $1.5 trillion dollars in global sales. So what's the base problem here? Money.
Money.
Money
It's
is buying these
hmm
people's deaths. Um,
just like the cigarette companies.
yeah.
And
Yes.
we talked about this too in an earlier episode that the groundwork has already been laid on how to combat this problem by the way they fought the tobacco industry. And this is not going to be a short battle. It may take years to get
Well, that's why
things.
it goes from 2022 through 2030. They're planning on a long-term strategy. And after that, they may renew the program.
Right. But I
They
saw.
said, go
Go
ahead.
ahead.
Well, Juan Tello, who's one of the World Health Organization executives, made the point that the industry actually learned from tobacco how to increase alcohol sales and use. They use same marketing strategies to get younger people and women involved in drinking more. So they specifically targeted people. And what they're going to do about it is something that you and I have already talked about. One is the price of alcohol that needs to increase, and that's what they're doing. Alcohol at this point has become accessible to just about everybody. And then availability, they need to work on that, and that's what the WHO is
Mm-hmm.
doing, not making it available. They said it used to, you had to go to specific places to get alcohol, and now it's sold in supermarkets, drugstores, outlets along the
Everywhere.
highway, et cetera, et cetera. You can buy alcohol. Now, not in a dry county yet, but in most of these other counties, you can. So they are taking on the strategies that you and I have talked about and that organizations inside our country have talked about doing, that are working on making alcohol less attractive.
And there's Mr. Tello up on the screen in that article. And
Hmm.
I mean, it's like everybody knows it, but everybody wants to ignore this problem.
Well, it's
And
existed for thousands of years. People, the drinking first came about, from accidental fermentation of fruit and
mm-hmm.
stuff, and people picked it up and they thought, wow, that's pretty cool. Well, look what this does. And so we've had alcohol for as long as we've had people, basically. And um, up until now, though, up until the last century or so, we haven't known all of the problems that it creates. And before the invention of the automobile, we didn't have all the people run over. It was, maybe you'd have somebody run over by a buggy sometime, but that was
Right.
pretty rare. And now we have thousands of people die on the roads worldwide from alcohol. So,
Yeah. And I don't think it was as strong uh, way back
well,
then.
right.
It's a neurotoxin. I mean, I I've read several articles. It's a neurotoxin. It causes at least 7 kinds of cancer, and I
Yeah.
just want to get that message out to everybody.
Well, and then I read an article just the other day that uh, it was a medical report about how alcohol is being linked to dementia pretty
Yes.
significantly. So, and we've known that for years, but we didn't have the brain studies that go with it. And I don't know about you, but the idea of Alzheimer's and dementia, having had a mother, go through
Hmm.
that, it really frightens me. And I can't imagine drinking taking that kind of a chance. But it's a lot of people don't worry about it. The alcohol is more important to them.
Yeah.
Um, We've also normalized it so much because like I said, it's ubiquitous in a lot of countries. And now it is in this country. And there are people who come down here because I've got a friend who's from up north and she came down here. She said she didn't even know what a dry county was. She thought
Hmm.
maybe we had a problem with water, that she said
Wow.
she had no idea. Most people up north did not have an idea of what a dry county was
Yeah.
because they're found more in the south. So, but we have normalized it so much that now people think worldwide that's that's okay.
Yeah.
And worldwide they're seeing more and more problems. You mentioned to me the other day about Ireland. Ireland
Hmm.
has a significant problem.
Yes.
And
And
they're also working on it through the WHO and whatnot. And also another country which has had horrible problems for years is Russia. Russia has had such alcohol problems that their lifespan is nowhere near as long as ours because they have so many, especially men, die of liver disease and things,
yeah.
side effects of drinking. So, and it actually causes fewer births. So that's a
Oh.
significant problem there. Now, they're not one of the countries I specifically read about in my research, and it may be because they're not as open about these kind of
Right.
programs in Russia. But I thought, if I were the leader of Russia, I would be very concerned about that because they are already have a declining population, and a
Right.
country can get so low in population they can't function. Japan is worried about that. So, and I just thought that was interesting that Russia was one of the worst countries for alcohol problems.
You think it might be all that living under all that communism for years?
They know it is. They
Yeah.
know that during the communist era, people were so depressed and
Mm-hmm.
they had nothing to look forward to. Most people haven't got a clue what living under a communist system is really like. And the only reason I do is I have relatives who lived under the communist system. They
Yeah.
lived in East Germany and I know what their lives were like. So yes, they attribute a lot of the Russian alcoholism to the living
Communism.
under a totalitarian system of government.
It would drive a person to drink, I would imagine. Talking about that, I found this article. I'm going to put it up. Um, Reducing harm due to alcohol success stories from 3 countries, and it's about from the World Health Organization. They are doing this right. They've suggested these alcohol control policies for the I think it's the European region, and not many of the member states use these measures, but Lithuania, Scotland, and the Russian Federation showed how effective it could be if they use these measures, and it's just common sense. Um, they identified 3 ways uh, and this is just common sense: increase excise taxes on alcoholic beverages, enact and enforce bans on comprehensive restrictions on exposure to alcohol advertising, and enact and enforce restrictions on the physical availability of retailed alcohol. Those are 3 big things that helped. And it says the new WHO report reveals that these measures are still vastly underused. All they need to do is put them in place. And it's talking about Lithuania. And let's see, it says that they started doing it in 2008 and 9, and then in 2014, and they used restrictions on alcohol advertisement and a ban on alcohol sales in gas stations and kiosks. And then in 2016, they increased the minimum legal drinking age and increased the price of alcoholic beverages and limited their retail sale time and banned the advertisement of alcohol. And they went from their drinking age was 18, but they put it up to 20. I don't know why 21. But then it says in 2010, Lithuania had the highest rate of alcohol attributable years of life lost to the European Union. The
Mhm.
implementation of effective alcohol control measures led to a 20% reduction of this rate by 2016. That's 6 years. That's quite a bit, I think.
Yeah, that goes along with the goals that the WHO had
Mm-hmm.
implemented, that they wanted to see a 20% drop in alcohol usage in most of these, in certain areas. Like driving accidents and mortality and stuff like that. And among their 113 member states. And right now, there are like 50 of those member states that have already met those goals. So I'm sure that they will increase, they'll work on the countries that haven't, but then they'll also bump the goals up so it's not just 20%.
Right. They also talked about Scotland. It said the Scottish government, and again, I'm reading from this article that I have up. The Scottish government has concentrated on changing behaviors connected to drinking. In 2009, the authorities adopted a framework for action that included 41 alcohol control measures, from a ban on multi buy discounts on alcoholic beverages in off trade establishments to alcohol brief interventions. And they implemented something called minimum unit pricing. It couldn't be sold for less than a certain amount. And that says was a real game changer that happened in 2018. It took 6 years for this measure to enter into the force after the law was passed. But it says in the first year after implementation, alcohol sales reduced to a 25-year low, and deaths by alcohol dropped by 10%. That's really good.
It is, and but I think the improvements, I think, actually multiply. from those successes. People will see how successful that
Yes.
is. And people even in the country that's doing this, they will see the attempt and then it becomes self perpetuating.
Yes.
And I think that's why we're trying so hard to get that attitude here in this country. Of course, there are multiple other organizations around the country, our country, that are trying the same thing. Um, but once you start having successes like that and get people backing off on, a substance like alcohol, then that, like I said, it becomes self perpetuating even more and more and more. It just
Yes.
multiplies.
Absolutely. And the last one it talked about in the article was the Russian Federation. Um, it says it was one of the first countries of the region to develop an evidence based alcohol control policy. Um, it says in the early 2000s, fundamental legislation overhaul significantly reduced the number of small scale producers, which decreased the size of the formerly large counterfeit. And my paper has cut off. Um, but it's up here, up here on the screen, and if I can see that, um, yeah, I think that's the one that it lowered it like 46%.
Well, they had a significant problem. They needed to lower it drastically.
Yeah, there's still probably a lot even with that,
Oh, yeah. I
but
think I saw those statistics once, but I'm not confident enough of them to recite. But I thought what the American one of the American administrators of who Juan Tello or Tio, I'm not sure how he pronounces that,
right,
made the point. He said we can advise national governments to be aware of the dynamics of the problems with alcohol. He said we confront them on choices they make. For example, many countries subsidize the alcohol industry because they think they are promoting economic development.
mm-hmm,
He said the profits this industry earns, though, do not balance the harms it produces by pushing people to consume alcohol. We make governments aware of the conflict of interest they face on this. Through lobbying or economic incentives, the alcohol industry tries to undermine the legislation we promote to avoid exposing especially children to alcohol advertisements and et cetera, et cetera. Um, we give countries 5 recommendations that are cost effective to implement, especially in middle income countries, to increase the pricing, particularly through taxation, ban marketing and sponsorships advertising alcohol. And he particularly later on talks about sports, how, sports are thought to be really healthy, but you go to these sports arenas where they're doing games and things, and they're not only selling alcohol, it's advertised all over the place. He said, we decrease the physical availability of alcohol outlets, enforce checks and control of blood alcohol concentration and treatment. And so they're taking those methods that, only some of which we've used in this country successfully, and they're taking them around the world. But I was particularly interested in that the first part where they talk to these governments about how no, alcohol doesn't benefit you financially. And we did some research here a while back where we tried to look at the economic benefits versus the problems with alcohol in certain, in countries and in this country and whatnot. And, it was almost universally how much benefits you get from having alcohol because you get that taxation and stuff. But
right,
yet they did not cover the problems. They didn't cover the wrecks and the insurance and the hospitalization and the deaths and the damage to society and thing. And you have to balance that out before you can actually say it improves the economy. And who is making that point that it doesn't really improve the economy?
right. And they are targeting, uh, they've saturated, I think, a lot of the more wealthy countries, and they're now going after some of the middle to lower income countries, and they're I say they're finding victims. They may look at it like customers, but they're finding victims now, and we're they're going after young people and women. And like the Joe Camel cigarette commercials, they stopped them
Yeah.
from that. And you were talking about the sports. Young people are at sports events. They're very interested in it.
Yeah.
And
And that's why we want to target our advertising to those kids to make it look like, well, that's exactly what you do. You go to the basketball game or you go to the football game carrying your can of beer with you or buying your can of beer when you're in there. I assume I don't go to sports events, but that's because I've never been a sports person.
Right.
I laugh about it in my family. Um, some of the successes, I wanted to get into those. He said, and this again is this guy that works with WHO, and we've talked a lot about WHO because they are doing such a good job. He said about the success, he said, I love the ones that are driven by younger generations because they're fantastic and creative. These are the programs that they're implementing. He says, in Norway, restrictions on marketing or selling to youth are high. Youth volunteer mystery shoppers ran a campaign in which they attempted to buy alcohol to see whether anyone responded if they were caught. 70% of the time, they managed as minors to get perfectly good and decent people to buy alcohol for them. They developed an approach to that and now have a huge related program. The government recently awarded them, and this is in Norway again, um, the government recently awarded them funds to use these methods as surveillance for providers to not sell alcohol to minors. And we used to do that here with our alcohol people, ABC board, they would send people
Uh-huh.
around various times to just double check. Sometimes they'd catch outlets selling alcohol to minors, and sometimes they wouldn't. I don't even know if they do that anymore because it's gotten so heavily alcoholized that I don't
Yeah.
even know if they're trying to find out if they're selling to kids or not.
Well, how when the so-called private clubs came in, everybody, if you went to eat at that establishment, uh, you would have to sign in. And now they don't even bother to do that. So, does that mean that they'll not even bother to check their uh, ID to see how old they are at some point?
Yeah. Well, some of them, I think, um, if you look young, they might check you. If you look older, they might not. I don't know. My daughter, I don't think it was alcohol venues. It may have been. It may have been restaurants. I don't know. They checked her until she was like 32. She said every time she tried to buy any kind of alcohol at a restaurant or something to have, a mixed drink, they
Right,
would they would card her. So she always thought that was really funny.
right. It just intrigues me how we have the plan to do it. It's been used with tobacco, with big tobacco,
Yeah.
and it's like a uphill battle. And it was for them. They smoked on airplanes. They smoked everywhere. It was like a joke to sit in the non-smoking section at a restaurant because what was keeping the
Remember
smoke? Yeah.
Yeah, you remember when we used to go to IHOP when it was the
Yes.
non-smoking to smoking section, we'd have our food and the smoke would come wafting over
Oh,
our area. And so, yeah, you're right, it wasn't. So they finally, eventually enough people said, I don't want this.
right.
They didn't want enough people made enough noise to get it stopped. And now it's not illegal to smoke anymore. It's just that you don't smoke in certain areas. They put enough restrictions on it so that smoking is probably not at this point something that's attractive enough for a lot of people to do. It's kind of considered yucky now. But
Yeah.
Joyce, just the other day, just this week, I saw the first tobacco ad on TV that I've seen in years. And it was at a party, and this guy is offering one of these skinny cigars.
Uh huh.
And it was literally a cigar advertisement, a tobacco advertisement on TV. And I want to chase down that because I was pretty sure that they had actually passed laws that
Yeah.
you could not advertise tobacco, on television anymore. Now this was on. I don't know. I don't get cable. I get,
Yeah.
I stream everything now. So I don't know if the rules are different on that, but I was really stunned when I saw that.
Yeah.
I mean, I normally don't watch ads. And when I saw that, I thought, holy cow, I have not seen a tobacco ad probably in 20 years.
And cigars are tobacco.
Yes, they are. But, if we did this with alcohol, that would have the same effect. It would lessen if you don't put it right in front of people's faces a lot, they're
Right.
less likely to do it, which is why they do put stuff. Look at the food advertisements they have,
Mm-hmm.
just everywhere. You get up and go to the refrigerator and get something to eat, because they stimulate that desire. So these countries, and I thought it was amazing. Some countries, is it have no and this is multiple countries have a no drinking, no alcohol day, November 15th. That would be tomorrow
Mm,
for us. I
yeah.
don't know if we celebrate it or not, but and some countries, and I think we used to do this too. You couldn't drink on election day.
Oh, wow.
India does not. Their holiest holidays and their election day. You can't drink. The bars are closed, and
Right.
it's for obvious reasons. And so that keeps it out. Those are all, even if small, those are effective in pointing out that we don't have to have alcohol all the time.
Yeah.
South Korea has an alcohol awareness day. A lot of these, I was just amazed.
Hmm.
Japan observes a dedicated alcohol related problems awareness week every year.
Yeah.
Um, so, we see all of this, and I think these are real successful programs that they're doing overseas. Everybody sees what the problem that there's a problem with alcohol. Every country does.
They know it, but if they put the effort in to stop it, and then that the alcohol companies are going to pitch a fit because it's
Well, the
money, money,
tobacco
money.
companies did too, but it didn't work because the public was working against the tobacco, and the public needs to work against the alcohol. And you and I have talked about this before, that one of the problems with alcohol is that, especially when you deal with legislators who are not legislating against this or making these kind of laws, probably a lot of them are alcoholics. And
Oh yeah.
I think now the new term is alcohol use disorder, AUD. I'm sorry, I just called it alcoholics. So it's not in their best interest to want to pass
Right.
measures, plus the fact that they are still getting tax money. And it all goes back to the money. I look at our city
Mm.
council, who have basically passed all but two alcohol permits requested. And I know of, there may be some others, but within the recent past, there have only been two that I know of that they denied. Um,
If people would get up and just not think, well, somebody else is going to do this, if they would write to their officials, city, state, uh, local officials, um, and let them know, hey, I don't want this in my community. We've been voted dry, and not just here in the whole state and the nation. Um, we want to connect with. I know there are other organizations out there, and we would like to have, I guess, a coalition of, uh, or a federation or whatever you would call it, of all of us working together. Um, and I know there's others out there. If any viewers, listeners know of any organizations like that, drop it in the comments, and make sure you give us a like and subscribe. And Iris, do you have any closing thoughts?
yeah, I did, but they kind of left. My train left the station without them. I did want to make that point about the city council. Knowing the problems with alcohol, knowing where a dry county continue to pass these alcohol permits, and it's all for the money. And the sad thing about it is, and Bob has exposed this in his probably the only person. He's definitely the only person I know of, and the only research I've ever seen, and I've done a lot of research that exposes the cost of alcohol versus the tax benefits or whatever that you get from them.
Right.
And but our city council just ignores it, and that bothers me because they're
Me
ignoring
too.
our votes, they're ignoring fact, they're ignoring health advice, they're ignoring anything with this. And by the way, Cricket County is dry, and up until what, 25, 30 years ago, it was dry. We didn't have it.
Yes.
We had very private clubs had some, you could drink there. Anything else you had to go to the county line and get. And people have said all over, well, if we don't have alcohol in the town, then people go down and get it and have, get killed coming back drinking. Well, the thing about it is, and I think I pointed this out before, it's illegal to drive with an open container.
Yeah.
And if you get pulled over and you've got an open container, you're going to be in serious problem. They're not supposed to be driving when they're drunk anyway, so that shouldn't be an issue.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there just aren't any excuses
That's an
anymore that
excuse.
would indicate that we cannot make alcohol very unpopular, not illegal, but very
Very
unpopular.
unpopular, just like cigarettes. And look down look down on cigarettes. Used to be in the movies all the time. You don't hardly ever see anybody smoking in the movies anymore.
And if
It's
they
a
are, they're usually not a positive character.
Yeah, it's a turn off. That's what I want alcohol to be. It's always been a turn off to me, um, because of all the bad things about it. There's not one good thing about alcohol. Not one thing that no saving grace on it. Well, Iris, uh, I that's about all I have, and unless you have something else, we will
We could
return.
talk for hours on
Oh,
this
we
because
could.
we didn't even get into the number of these countries that are part of this 113 state alliance with who, and we could talk about each one of them what they're doing, but we don't have time. That would take hours.
Right.
So I guess that's what we'll do for today.
Okay. We'll continue this at a later time, at a later podcast.